Good morning, my renegades. Welcome back to Rogue Radio. My name is Sarah Jane, and today is another episode of Conspiracy. We are picking up where we left off on MK Ultra. Yay! It's a lot. I took notes. I'm professional now. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, links will be down in the description on how to contact me. Thank you very much. If you are at all interested in supporting Rogue Radio, if you like what we do, if you like what we are putting out for you and all the information that we give, we have a GoFundMe. Every donation that we do receive will be put towards missions and also the expansion of our YouTube channel and our Anchor. Missions is something that me and my husband believe in. We want to help people overseas, and seeing that there are many countries that do listen to this podcast, we want to be able to give back to you as well. And giving into missions and mission work and missionaries is something that we want to do. Our GoFundMe page will also be in the description below, so be sure to click and donate. Thank you very much. We love you very much. So where I left off was Project Bluebird, and the reason why I decided to stop there was because I just got busy, because, you know, I'm a wife, I have responsibilities, I don't really need to explain. Anyway, during this time, especially with the notes that I've taken, during this time, 1950s, 1951, 52, 53, it was all about war. It was all about America trying to be this big war power, compared to the Soviets, where the Soviets were able to get their hands on any type of information or any type of technology because they were able to, you know, they had the resources. America was trying to keep up. So, and their mentality and their excuse for doing all of these heinous acts towards people was, it's better in the hands of the U.S. than the Soviets, or their enemy at the time. So Project Bluebird in 1952 was an offshoot of Project MK Ultra, or MK Naomi, whatever you want to call it. There's been so many names that it has gone under, and honestly, it all is the same thing because it's resulted in the same thing. It's Project MK Ultra. Focus on hypnosis and behavior modification as a means of preventing agency employees from providing intelligence to adversaries. So what they were basically trying to do were two main things. One, they wanted to be able to reinforce the mind of their subjects, their agents, their soldiers, their CIA employees. They wanted to be able to condition their mind to the point where they were not able to divulge any information at all about what was going on in America, just in case they were taken prisoner by the Soviets or by any other enemy. So that if they were ever interrogated, they weren't able to talk. Number two is, if America was able to take any prisoners of war, that they wanted to be able to condition the minds of their prisoners, of the Soviets' prisoners, of any enemy's prisoners. They wanted to be able to condition their mind and manipulate their mind to the point where they sing like a bird, giving them as much information as possible. This is the whole reason why MK Ultra kind of came to be, and why this was their reasoning. And There's other reasons as well. They wanted to be able to create a super soldier where they'd be able to take out their personality, condition them so much to where their personality is gone, where their will is gone, and where they're completely obedient to the orders that they are given under hypnosis, and also be able to commit heinous acts and also not remember after. So there's a lot that goes into this, and it's all about manipulating the mind. It's all about manipulating the brain, because the brain is what makes you you. It's your personality. I went into psychology. I went into a psychology class back in high school, and there are different parts of the brain that are in charge of certain things. Like, if you were able to touch your forehead, like if you touch your forehead right now, that is your frontal lobe, meaning that's your personality. Those are the decisions that you make on a daily basis. That lobe is basically who you are as a person. That is all the information downloaded into one lobe, saying that, oh, I am this person. Like, I am this person because of these experiences. Your frontal lobe is basically who you are. Then there's the temporal lobes on the side of your head. That controls your hearing. The occipital lobe is the little knob in the back of your head, right here. That helps with your decision making. That helps with deciding things and deciding whether things are good or bad. All of that stuff. Your brain is in charge of so much. So when someone tampers with that, and it's easy to do, unfortunately, because you see that some people end up better off than other people, especially if a child has been conditioned to be abused, and that's normal for them, so they end up abusing their children one day. It's all about the environment that the brain has been put in. And MK Ultra has put people's minds into a horrific state to where they've stripped them of every identity that they've had. They've stripped them of their free will. They have stripped them of who they are in order to condition them and make them in their own image. Is that not a mockery of what God does for us when He makes us? I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this spiritual, but maybe there's a reason why I said that. MK Ultra had a God complex. They wanted to make people in their image, in their suitable image, in order to carry out things that maybe the president wasn't aware of, or maybe the government itself wasn't aware of. This is the result of what happens when you give people too much power. And it's just awful. But there's a document from 1952 that I want to read. So, for the past few months, Bluebird has been endeavoring to ascertain by research, study, instruction, and some practice that value, if any, can be derived from SI and H techniques. SI meaning special interrogation, and H meaning hypnosis. When applied to war-specific agency problems, these broad problems, using known special interrogation and hypnosis techniques may be classified as follows. A. Can accurate info be obtained from willing individuals? B. Can agency personnel or persons of interest to this agency be conditioned to prevent outside power from obtaining info from them by any means? can we obtain control of the future activities, physical and mental, of any given individual, willing or unwilling, by applying special interrogation and hypnosis techniques? And let me see. D. Can we prevent any outside power from gaining control of future activities, physical and mental, of any personnel by any known means? Bluebird believes that above can be answered in the affirmative using special interrogation and hypnosis techniques. They refer to SI and H a lot, so if I end up saying SI and H, just know it's special interrogation and hypnosis. Bluebird is not fully satisfied with results to date, but believes with continued war and study, remarkable and profitable results can be obtained regularly. However, B, C, and D are as yet understandable, although Bluebird is for the opinion that there is a worthwhile chance that all three at some future date can be answered affirmatively. This opinion is supported generally by numerous knowledge in these of these techniques, and by much literature intelligence in this field, since affirmative proof of B, C, and D would be incredible value to this agency. Bluebird's general problem is to set up, conduct, and carry out research, practical and non-theoretical, in this direction. Set out below is one specific proposal aimed at achieving our ends rapidly as possible with maximum security. Test subject was brought in for observation by Bluebird on 19, 20, and 21 of February. Person's personality, ability, and intelligence, sincerity, and apparent security-mindedness were impressive. Bluebird officers were unable to find any indication of deviousness or pro-Soviet interests during these observations. Only apparent weakness were his foreign background and non-United States citizenship. This person was given funds to instruct and begin research and testing along the lines that were set, conditioning soldier to the point that they will willingly carry out heinous acts for the U.S. So, before I go any further, think about something real quick. Think about 9/11. Think about all of those plane crashes, all of those train crashes, all of those terrorist attacks, all those suicide bombings, everything, okay? Understand that what I said about Project Bluebird, one of the two things that they were going to do, what they wanted to do, was to be able to condition a foreign prisoner of war and condition them to the point where they sing like a bird and give them as much information as they know. Okay? What if the people who committed 9/11 were not only... What if they weren't just foreign? Okay, let's just forget about the fact that they were Muslim, okay? What if they were actually conditioned by MK Ultra in order to make the US look good? What if 9/11 was really an inside job? What if the crash at the Pentagon was not an accident? Or, of course it wasn't an accident, but what if it wasn't a terrorist attack? What if America was so obsessed? What if the American government was so obsessed to the point where they wanted to be like this big war power? They wanted to be a force to be reckoned with by other enemy countries, right? So what do? They stage an attack in order for America to look good, in order for America to be known as this nation that cannot be touched or that cannot be defeated. And I find that twisted. I just do. It's just not okay, because what I'm about to say was actually from these are the exact words from Operation Bluebird, from this document that I found from 1952, okay? This is what it says. Conditioning a soldier to the point that they will willingly carry out heinous acts for the U.S. by post-hypnosis can crash an airplane or wreck a train, travel long distances, commit specified acts, and return or bring documents or materials back to them. Under hypnosis, they wanted to be able to control a person so much to the point where they murder thousands of people, to the point where they are crashing planes and derailing trains and all of these things. Why? Because they wanted to be known as a superpower. They wanted to be known as a force to be reckoned with, just like the Soviets were. After World War II happened, America was obsessed with being the greater power in the world. That's just how, this is their excuse for doing these things. But, travel long distances, commit specified acts, and return or bring documents and materials. Can a person acting under post-hypnosis control successfully reduce combat fatigue, meaning they won't get as tired as much, produce extreme mental effort, meaning they go the extra mile, and also amnesia under all conditions. Amnesia was a big thing for them because they didn't want people to remember what they did, whether it had been murder or mass murder, genocide, whatever. They didn't want their subjects to remember what they did. After a person's personality, alter a person's personality, how long will it hold? Unwilling subjects into willing ones. So they were conditioning unwilling people. Can you imagine them just like capturing somebody who's unwilling to go on under all of this control, and then somehow they're conditioned to being a willing soldier? So unwilling subjects into willing ones. How long can a method last without unaided reinforcement? They were also trying to find a way to create a gas that also was able to hypnotize them. Sleep-inducing drugs such as sodium A or P in everyday items. So that, I think I talked about that before, where they were trying to drug people with cigarettes and candy and fountain pens, like in order for them to control the people that they were interrogating and hypnotizing at the time. So let's see. Alan Dulles was somebody that was part of Project Bluebird for a while. He was 6 weeks in training and then hired to oversee the CIA's covert operations, pursued every avenue of mind control. He believed it helped combat communism and obsessed with mind control. So this man is evil. This was in 1950 and 1951. Alan Dulles actually proposed something to the CIA and was like, hey, can we torture people? Because he preferred torture and called it medical research augmentation. And he proposed that it had to be carried out. Okay, sorry. Hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. basically what Alan Dulles was trying to propose to the CIA was like, hey, torture is effective, so can we get funding for this? So can we can torture people as much as we want? Can we do that, please? Somehow the CIA was like, okay, as long as you don't do it on American soil. So they decided to go overseas, and Bluebird teams have to have about 4 people, of which had to be experts in medicine, psychointerrogation, electric shock, and the polygraph. Alright, just to give you a little rundown of my jumbled mess of notes. One thing that Alan Dulles was very obsessed with was, and this is something that he actually said, can a person under hypnosis be able to commit murder? The teams now built, then in the prisons, like they were called black site prisons. They came into play. One of them was called Camp King, and from what I understand from the podcast that I was taking notes from, Camp King was actually a Nazi-owned camp where American prisoners of war were tortured. So Alan Dulles decided to purchase it and repurpose it to where they were going to torture foreign people. Just foreign prisoners. Alright? Just foreign prisoners. Just because. Yeah. Carry out further interrogations, became staff doctor at Camp King, used to be a place to interrogate Nazis. Okay, yeah. No. That's right. Hang on. Camp King was a place that Alan Dulles purchased, but at some point it was a place where Nazis interrogated American prisoners of war, and before Alan Dulles got his hands on it, it was also repurposed to torture Nazis. So America decided, like, okay, we got Camp King, so we're torturing y'all now. Like, just kind of turning the tables. And now that Alan Dulles has it, he's going to keep the torture going. So, at some point, Alan Dulles was able to get his hands on a facility in Kronberg known as the Villa Schuster, which was a Jewish home. And the people who lived there did not have enough money, and it was handed over by the Nazis at that point, and he was able to get his hands on it to make it a CIA torture house. Oh my god. Patients that came through this house were known as expendable, meaning that no one would miss them. So they found people. They literally found people that, like, no one would miss them. Maybe the homeless, maybe people who had depression, or just people that they thought were easy to manipulate, basically. Made every excuse imaginable to make it to where these people could be treated as badly as possible. Patients were injected with sodium A and Benazedrine. Oh my god, I can't. Benazedrine, chloramine, and picrotoxin. Let me say that again because I'm not satisfied with me pronouncing that. Patients were injected with sodium A, Benazedrine, chloramine, and picrotoxin. Between the transition state of a stimulant and depressant subject to hypnosis, electroshock, and debilitating heat. So while this person that they had, this prisoner that they were interrogating, they were injected with these chemicals, because sodium A, I think, is a stimulant, and Benazedrine is a depressant. Chloramine and picrotoxin were other chemicals that they just decided to make a cocktail out of. They were injected with this cocktail, and between the state of stimulant and depressant, were subjected to hypnosis, electroshock, and debilitating heat. So while they had been drugged out of their mind, they were also tortured. goal was to induce violent cathartic reactions, putting them to sleep, then waking them up to confuse them enough to be coerced into reliving events from their past. And nothing worked. Oh yeah, that's the thing. So many failed attempts. There have been so many failed attempts by MK Ultra. Failure after failure after failure in the name of control. That's basically what they wanted. They want to control people. All in the name of control. All in the name of being this war superpower. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people died. Failure after failure after failure. This is... I'm ashamed. It makes me ashamed. Like, it's... let me not get emotional and angry, because this is just... It's awful! But anyway, at some point after all of these researches had become inconclusive, they couldn't really figure out how to make the mind bend to their will, basically, or they didn't get enough results as much as they wanted. Project Bluebird was put to rest. But Sidney Gottlieb decided to resurrect it and call it Project Artichoke. So this is in 1951. Sidney Gottlieb began to work at the CIA in July 13th, 1951. A month later, decided to expand it and centralize Bluebird, basically just kind of reliving it, like making it live again, you know, like how Frankenstein got brought to life. 3 days after the launch, Dulles became the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence. So, Alan Dulles, the man who just loves to torture people, became the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence. I won't say anything. If you are not angry by me telling you this, all this stuff, I don't know what to say. And he was supporting the new launch. So, the themes recommended, okay, this was their basic goals that they wanted to have in order to kind of set up everything. So, there's a lot. So, let's go. They wanted a safe house for interrogations. They wanted to have a safe place to interrogate people. That's ironic and stupid. Adjoining room for recording interrogations, and a bathroom needed because interrogation would induce nausea, vomiting, etc. So, y'all were torturing people to the point where they pooped themselves and vomited on themselves. Y'all don't have no heart. Techniques can be used at any time during interrogation, during a starting point or the last resort for stubborn subjects. Drug effects on ego control can willingly suppress information. Drugs to make them feel better or worse, and drugs on hand or created for individuals. So while they were using these techniques such as like special interrogation and hypnosis, they also wanted to be able to have drugs that can affect their ego or their control over their own mind, as far as I can tell, can willfully suppress the information that they have or that they were given. And drugs to make them feel better or worse, meaning like whatever the research provided, whether or not, I don't know, in certain conditions, I would say if that person is being interrogated and they were in a panic, that they could drug them to make them feel better, or if they wanted more information from this person, that they would be able to drug them to make them feel worse and in a panic. Drugs on hand or created for individuals for medical torture.
So they were just basically drugging these people. Dosing unwilling patients with potent drugs. Unwilling patients. There's no way around that, honestly. You can't make an unwilling person volunteer anything. They basically captured people. Whether or not they were criminals or mental patients, it was bad that they were torturing people that were unwilling to undergo all of this stuff. They had free will, and they wanted to be able to strip people of that in order for them to be the best test subjects ever. They wanted to be able to test them with extreme temperatures and sound, electroshock machines, which honestly was a very popular thing back in the day, especially when it came to psychology and psychologists. They believed that putting someone in a bath, sometimes they would put people in a bath and shock them. But electroshock therapy was just their way of trying to be able to get people to access memories or repressed memories that were buried deep inside them. Electroshock was very popular back in the day, way back in the day. I want to say Sigmund Freud was also using it. Dr. Jung was also using that on his patients. So it was a popular thing way back in the day, and I guess even in the 1950s they were still using it. So, yes. Bad, very bad, because you were torturing a patient. Whether or not it worked, I don't think it did, but still, you're putting someone in a very terrible environment to the point where they feel pain. Anyway, bacteria, fungi, sugar, vitamins, all for the reaction from the subject. So, also what they were doing, if you had a vitamin deficiency, okay, because at some point, you had to feed the prisoners, you had to feed the people that, you were interrogating. They would restrain the vitamins that they need. They would take the vitamins away from them. Like, if someone had an iron deficiency, they would keep them from eating meat. They would keep them from eating the vegetables that they need to gain nutrients. So, if this person had diabetes and they needed sugar in their diet, they wouldn't feed them with any sugar or anything like that. They would literally give them food that would hurt them. As far as bacteria and fungi, I would say that they were probably injecting them as well with all of that stuff in order to get something out of them. All for a reaction from the subject. Because if you restrain certain foods or certain things that a body needs, that body will start shutting down, and so will the brain. They knew that. They knew that if they restrained certain foods and vitamins from a certain person who had a deficiency, that they would start talking, or they could start talking. But it's not. I'm mad. I'm really pissed now. I'm sorry. It was called exposure therapy. There is a way of doing exposure therapy that is actually not endangering to the people now. It's actually a very effective way of getting to the root causes of why people are depressed or have OCD or something like that. Exposure therapy today basically would be taking someone's phobia. Like, if someone was afraid of the dark, and you wanted to be able to extract that fear from them in order to say, hey, it's not so bad, you're not that afraid. It's basically exposing this person to their fear to the point where they're not afraid of it anymore. And it is effective in a good way, in a positive way, but you also have to understand that exposure therapy actually came from really, really serious conditions, like I said, restraining sugar and vitamins from the person that needed it the most in order for them to talk. Nowadays, exposure therapy is just exposing people to their fear in order for them to overcome it, which I feel, like I said, is very effective in therapy, but you also have to know when to stop. So, yeah. Electroshock, coma, and amnesia. Like I said, electroshock was somehow an effective way of getting people to access memories. Back in the day, they also wanted to be able to induce comas and amnesia in order for them to have no memory of what they did to them. They didn't want to undergo any brain surgeries, but if the subject needed it, they would be observing it. That's just messed up. Exposure to UV and infrared light and moving or vibrating rooms, meaning they wanted to induce panic so much that, like, they would be able to move their rooms around. They wanted to be able to just create as much panic as possible in a person. So yes. Artichoke team included research specialists, medical officers, and security technicians. So, by 1952, 4 teams were active in West Germany, France, Japan, and South Korea. So, that one team that I told y'all about, now expanded to 4 teams. So, throughout the world, there were people from the American government, American CIA, torturing people. Just because, all in the name of research. But, okay, more were added later on. Oh, I'm sorry, there's so much more that were probably added on. Yeah. They came up with a new drug and called for more subjects and torturers. So we're gonna cut to Fort Detrick, which I have talked about before. Fort Detrick is still alive and well. It's still undergoing a lot of things, which I feel like MK Ultra is still going on, which I believe. It used to be called Fort Doom, because honestly, I believe the reason why they used to call that was because a lot of subjects met their doom. They had this spherical gas chamber, basically. It was like a controlled environment chamber. And they have this, it's in Fort Detrick. So in this controlled spherical environment, alright, it was called the 8 Ball. And it was a gas chamber for subjects to react with it was 4 stories high, and it weighed 13 tons? 131 tons, I'm sorry. The largest aerobiology chamber ever built, and this was built in the 1950s. There were 5 airtight ports where gases could be filtered through to the subject inside, and they were strapped inside. Humidity and temperature levels could be regulated for toxins under conditions. So if they were to gas them, they were able to put them in freezing temperatures while they were gassed, or high temperatures while they were gassed. Okay? After Project Artichoke, there was a project called Project Chatter. So by the end of 1950, G. Richard Wendt, somebody in the medical field, he decided to study heroin's effects. So one thing that you may not know, or you may know, A lot of people know that MK Ultra used LSD. They also used a lot of other drugs in order to manipulate people's minds. That was a very strong, like, component throughout the whole foundation of MK Ultra and all of this other stuff. They were trying to experiment with drugs, interrogation, torture, all of that stuff in order to get somebody to talk. But established a facility where students were paid $1 an hour to ingest measured doses of heroin while he studied their reactions. The things that people did back in the day, well, the things that people do now, honestly. Heroin was useful to him, and he also took heroin himself long after experiments stopped. So they all became drug addicts. even the scientist that was part of Project Chatter. Anyway, 1952, the Navy and Project Artichoke met up and underwent a series of interrogations where the professor went to show his research with a combination of drugs that could make anyone chat. This is funny. The cocktail that he had decided to come up with was seconal dexedrine, active ingredient in weed, which is THC, that could make anyone talk. And guess what? It was a big failure. I think we need a break. Cue the advertisement.
You want to know how I make some unique podcasts? If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. For one, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and they're easy to use. Anchor will distribute your podcast for free so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It is everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download your free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's really fun. Come and join the Renegade family, all right?
They decided to inject this cocktail with 5 depressed subjects. Nothing changed. Nothing happened. So it was a big failure. So Project Chatter was a failure. Let's see. They still continued research. So a treatment enough sodium P to knock them out. 20 minutes later, bring them back to semi-consciousness between sleep and awake. Inject them with benzedrine, and then used the regression technique to where the subject thought he was talking to his wife. Okay, so this was actually the results from the 5 test subjects. So one of them was manipulated enough to the point where he thought he was talking to his wife. So for about an hour of talking, towards the end he was weeping violently, and they abandoned the project because for some reason it was just useless information, or it just decided to fail. Artichoke wanted to make a truth serum, Through psychopharmacology, a serum had to open the mind for programming and also be an amnesiac to lose memory of the subject. THC was one of the chemicals that they decided to experiment with, which is a weed ingredient. They wanted to be able to have no taste, no color or odor to the serum, and they also tested it on the artichoke team with candy, salad dressing, and mashed potatoes, and also they smoked it. Drug addicts. THC brings out the state of irresponsibility. Those were their research conclusions. They were very relaxed and they were very humorous. Not a useful serum in interrogations. No, of course not. So they moved on to guess what? Just guess the next drug. Cocaine. CIA gave mental patients that were already dealing with mental illnesses. They gave them cocaine in various forms, such as injections. Let me see. I gotta turn the page. They probably got them to smoke it and snort it as well, because cocaine can be taken in many forms. There was a lot of elation and talkativeness, free and spontaneous speech, and results were promising but unreliable in special interrogations, and moved on to heroin. So they went back to heroin. Frequently used by the police, intel officers, but became problematic and moved on to another drug, which is called mescaline. It was also crossed off the list. So all of those drugs, mescaline, cocaine, THC, and heroin were all crossed off the list. And this is where LSD came in. Gottlieb tried the drug on himself before using it on anyone else. And he loved it. Found it incredibly mind-opening and tested it on the volunteers in the CIA. And there were volunteers that agreed to be drugged in specific moments and environments. And others agreed to be surprised. So some were like, okay, yeah, put it in my food and let me see if I can trip out. And then others were like, you know what, surprise me. Just let me trip throughout the day. Just don't tell me. I want to be surprised. People are sick. Agency would drug them without warning. So, yes. Let's see, it says, November 4th, 1952, Alan Dulles is still around. He became CIA director, and his brother John Dulles as a Secretary of State. Yes. So he could do whatever he wanted without any repercussions and no results from research, but still underwent as usual. So whatever they did, even if the results were inconclusive, they were going to do whatever they wanted. And Alan Dulles and John Dulles made sure that they were able to do what they wanted. That was like the main thing. They wanted to be able to be free from the eyes of the president at the time. So Gottlieb got several doctors into mind control and told them to carry out tests on psychoactive drugs. Alright, December 5th, 1952. A doctor was injecting mescaline in a subject to observe. This person's name was Howard Blower. And this actually this one broke my heart, because this man, he was seeking treatment for his depression, and he got a divorce. He was a tennis player in the 1950s. I want to say he was a famous tennis player, and Howard Blower was seeking treatment for his depression. This doctor, without any warning or explanation, injected mescaline into this man many times, several times over a month. Okay. And this Howard, he complained of hallucinations. And the experiment continued after Blauer wanted to stop. So he didn't have any free will or any. He even said no. He said, "Please stop. I don't want this." But on January 8th, 1953, he was given a dose 14 times greater than the previous ones he had received. And the symptoms from that dose goes as follows. He was flailing violently, and then his body stiffened, and then he was pronounced dead. This one man that had already been down on his luck, has already been, fighting depression, already been just ripped apart because he had to go and divorce his wife for whatever reason. He lost the love of his life, and he was depressed, and he died because of an experiment, because the doctors were like, okay, he's a perfect specimen, so let's just go ahead and play with his heart and play with his mind to the point where he dies. It's inhuman. I hate it. There was no insight on the psycho drugs that they were using, and none of them could be used for mind control. So that was also a failure. So this man died for nothing, honestly. Even if it a human life is so precious. It really is. Because even if there were results from this, a man doesn't have to die in the name of research like this. This is awful. But on April 3rd, 1953, they were still trying to expand mind control so that our enemy could be bad and U.S. shall be worse. Oh, that was their mentality. Like I said, they knew that their enemy was bad, but they also wanted to be worse in order to be that war power that they wanted. So this is where Project MK Ultra comes in. And this is what it was called, MK Ultra. No other code names at all. This is the mother lode. This is the nitty-gritty that we wanted to get to, okay? It was given a $300,000 starting budget, not subjected to financial control, permission to conduct experiments at will, and no contracts or written agreements, and a new cryptonym, which was called MK Ultra. And that's where we stop, because I need to leave you at a cliffhanger, because listen, this was a lot to unpack, so I'm gonna give you guys a break. So I will see you on the 3rd chapter of MK Ultra, my friend. See you later. Shout out to the Switzerland listeners. Okay, the Swiss listeners, thank you very much for listening. Also, if you want to support Rogue Radio, go to the GoFundMe page, the Instagram, the Twitter, the YouTube. All of that will be in the description below. Unfortunately, if you're listening on Anchor or Spotify, you're going to have to copy and paste, which is the pain. But if you really want to know a little bit more about what we do and why we do what we do and why I decide to talk why I talk the way I do and the things that I research and why I want to talk about them, go ahead and follow me on all of those platforms. Also, you won't have to wait very long for the 3rd part, because I am getting to the point where I just want to get it all out and talk about it. So there will be a 3rd episode of Conspiracy on the MK Ultra very soon. So thank you for listening and being patient with me. Love you very much. See you in the trenches next time. I salute you. Bye.